From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Coming up today, K-State's Nathan Nelson will talk more about his study of the ability of cover crops to reduce phosphorus and sediment loss from no-till crop fields in the cause of water quality improvement. He'll also discuss the companion research he's conducted on how actual fertilizer application methods coupled with cover crop use influence that phosphorus movement. Then the new president of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, Jill Zimmerman, will talk about her vision for that long-standing and successful program in developing tomorrow's agriculture and rural community leaders in the state. And for this week's horticulture segment, K-State's Jared Hoyle will return to talk about winterizing lawn watering systems. All that here on Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You'll recall we visited some already about the information that was passed along to agricultural producers here a little over a week ago at the K-State Cover Crops Field Day held just south of Manhattan. One of the featured topics there was the utilization of cover crops and the impact on water quality. We want to expand on that topic now with the individual who passed along that very presentation. Nathan Nelson is a professor of agronomy, and he specializes in nutrient matters in the soil for Kansas State University. Nathan, this is based on a 3-year study that you've been conducting on how well cover crops can potentially protect water quality. Is that the drift of it?
That's correct. Yeah, we started this project about 3 years ago. We still have another 2 years to continue in the project, but there are some trends that are showing up fairly consistently over the past 3 years with respect to the effects of cover crops on water quality. And
we want to talk of what you've discovered to date. What cover crops specifically have you been working with in your field trials here?
Sure. I'm going to back up a little bit. We're in a corn-soybean rotation. We started out, the first year of the study was transition from conventional till to no-till. The second 2 years of the study was more in definite no-till. I recognize still there's a little bit of a transition time here we're in, but it was no-till with a fair amount of residue. So no-till corn-soybean rotation. Our cover crops have been consistently a small grain. Sometimes that has been wheat, sometimes triticale, often blended with brassica like rapeseed. And I think 1 year we had a legume in there, I think hairy vetch. So the exact mix has changed a little bit over time, but primarily a small grain has been the main cover crop that has lasted over the winter. We plant every year following either corn or soybean.
And the premise of these cover crops, as far as water quality goes, is to minimize runoff from the fields, basically, right?
Yes, we'll minimize the runoff as well as the different potential contaminants in that runoff, primarily sediment and phosphorus.
Let's talk about each of those, for you had some interesting findings on both ends there. Start with sediment, and you did discover that the amount of sediment lost from a field can be impacted significantly by cover crop utilization, correct?
Definitely, yes. We saw a 70% decrease in sediment loss when we used a cover crop compared to when we did not. And that was fairly consistent across all 3 years of the study, a very dramatic decrease in sediment loss. That's even in a system where we have no-till and fairly low sediment loss because of that no-till.
Very important point, isn't it?
Yeah, and so we're even improving upon what we consider one of our best management practices for sediment or erosion control right now. So that was great to see, that decrease in sediment loss.
And that is occurring with each of these cover crops? Each of these seem to perform well for that task?
Yeah, they all performed well, and this is across all 3 years. Some of the years we didn't have quite as much cover crop growth. Others we had more cover crop growth. But independent of the amount of growth, we still had good erosion control.
To stress again, this was in a no-till system. This wasn't part of your study, but if one were to extrapolate that out to a conventional tilled system, one would think that sediment reduction would be even more pronounced.
That first year where we had more of a conventional till system, we saw about the same percentage decrease. In fact, maybe even a little bit lower percentage-wise. Our cover crop was a little less and so forth. But because there was so much erosion in the conventional till, it might have only been 50 or 60% decrease in erosion loss, but it was 3 or 4 tons of sediment, that was saved per acre. And so I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was a lot of sediment that was saved because the erosion rates were so high in conventional till.
But you say in the no-till system, you were able to reduce that down to merely hundreds of pounds, if that.
Yeah. We were closer to 1/4 of a ton per acre or less. Actually, probably much less than that when we had cover crops.
The overall water runoff from those fields, you say that there may be some gain there as well.
Yeah, so we have seen in some rainfall events, we see less runoff with a cover crop, which is what we were expecting going into this. But then we see some other rainfall events where we see more runoff with a cover crop. This is because cover crops can shade the ground, and particularly when they're not growing actively. And so if you get multiple rainfall events, the ground can stay wetter under the cover crop. Mm-hmm. And so we can get events with higher runoff. And so across the entire year, we see kind of no difference in the volume of water that's leaving our field. But we do see that the water consistently comes off in a more gradual manner when you have a cover crop. The peak rate of water leaving the field decreases, so the intensity decreases, but the duration is a little longer. So the runoff is slower, lower rates, but longer period of time.
And when one thinks about the potential for gullies developing in a field, for instance, that intensity of runoff is key here. And if that can be more well distributed, the chances for ephemeral gullies or otherwise could be reduced. Is that fair to say?
Sure. Yeah, you can potentially reduce ephemeral gullies. That could be definitely contributing to the overall decrease in erosion. This could have impacts. Probably needs more study, but could have impacts in localized flooding issues, or even larger regional flooding issues when you have a lot of water that leaves fields real fast. That's when it overwhelms the stream system.
Now to the question, Nathan, of phosphorus loss from no-till fields that are sporting a cover crop. There's been quite some interest in this and in phosphorus levels in surface waters, and that prompts this work. What in general did you find there?
Well, phosphorus tends to bind fairly strongly to soil particles, and so one would expect that with such a large decrease in erosion, we would have seen a decrease in phosphorus loss. We did see a decrease in the particulate phosphorus loss, or the phosphorus associated with that erosion, but we saw an increase in the dissolved phosphorus loss. And for a net no change in total phosphorus. So we did not decrease phosphorus loss. Rather, we shifted from a particulate-bound phosphorus to a dissolved phosphorus form.
The hope has been obviously that cover crops can pull those phosphorus losses back in check. But that's the reality of the data then.
It is, yes. And there have been some other studies that have found some similar things in different climates, and we were hopeful going into this that maybe with our climate and our cropping systems we might see an overall decrease in phosphorus, but that didn't come true. Not yet. We'll continue the study, but so far we have not seen a decrease in phosphorus loss with cover crops.
But it does lead to another aspect of research here that you've been taking on, looking at fertilizer application variables, including here phosphorus, and whether that in combination with the cover crop protocol could make a difference here.
Exactly. The fact that the cover crops are not going to solve our phosphorus issue emphasizes the importance of using 4R nutrient management to reduce phosphorus loss. And when I say 4R, I'm talking about applying our fertilizers at the correct rate, at the correct time, in the correct place, and using the correct source, or the right source, right rate, right time, right place. And so what we compared was a fall broadcast fertilizer application, which we feel is the right time to apply phosphorus if we're going to broadcast it. It's when we have the least chance for runoff. We compared that system to a spring subsurface phosphorus application. So we're looking at a placement below the soil, and we have found that subsurface application decreased overall phosphorus loss by over 25% for both years, and we decreased the dissolved phosphorus, which is a more bioavailable form. We decreased that by 40% by subsurface placement. So pretty important that we use our 4R nutrient management to reduce our phosphorus losses.
So really, you couple the two approaches together, cover crop utilization once again, which can provide benefits in sediment loss reduction, and then with phosphorus management aligned so, one can attain some phosphorus retention as well.
Exactly, yes.
So all in all, this is shown to be pretty positive endorsement, if you will, of cover crop utilization in this manner, Nathan. Is that what your takeaway is?
You know, I would say I tend to continue to be positive on cover crops because we did see a decrease in the energy of the runoff, and we saw a decrease in erosion. Those are great things that we've been encouraging producers to do for a long time. Mm-hmm. We didn't see a decrease in the phosphorus, which emphasizes the fact that we need to use other management practices to reduce phosphorus loss. And you will continue to study cover crops and their various functions for water quality purposes, it sounds. Definitely. So this study, like I said, we've got 2 more years to go through this study with this current treatment, and then after that, we anticipate to continue using cover crops, looking at how these cover crops might change the soil over more than 5 years, and perhaps using some other 4R nutrient practices to control the phosphorus in combination with the cover crops. Really good information to share with our producers out there, as you did at the Cover Crops Field Day a few days back. Appreciate you coming over today, Nathan. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure. He's a professor of agronomy at K-State, and once more he spoke about cover crop impact on water quality at that aforementioned field day near Manhattan recently. That's Nathan Nelson on Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today, 800-321-3276, or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. We're back now on This Agriculture Today. It's our pleasure on this segment to introduce to you the newly appointed president of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program, which is based at Kansas State University. She came on board just this past October, and we want to talk with her about her aspirations for this long-standing leadership program in Kansas. Her name is Jill Zimmerman. Jill, congratulations, first of all, on the new appointment.
Well, thank you, Eric. It was both an honor and to get the nod to be able to be a part of the KARL program. It's something that has been near and dear to my heart for a long time, and my family's had some involvement at different levels, and so I'm just happy to be a part of it.
A number of folks out there know you already, but for those who don't, some of your background, you're from South Central Kansas originally and have been involved in various aspects of agriculture for a long while.
Yeah, I did. I grew up in South Haven, Kansas, and was a graduate of South Haven High School and grew up on a small family farm operation, and we're still active in farming today. And, went to Kansas State University and majored in ag and started in the extension world, and just kind of my career's taken different paths from there. But, yeah, it's been a good journey, and I'm happy to be where I'm at.
And your most recent appointment prior to taking the helm of KARL was as a county extension agricultural agent.
Yeah, back in your old neck of the woods,
Right.
Eric, I was in Cowley County, and I had 2 stints in extension, one in Garnett and Anderson County, and some great memories from eastern Kansas, and likewise in Cowley County. You couldn't ask for 2 extension units that are pretty supportive of ag and extension and just good people.
Yeah. And you are a KARL graduate.
Class 5, yeah. We went to Australia and New Zealand. As graduates, we all seemed to connect to where was your overseas experience, and so we were pretty fortunate to get to go there.
Now you are the president of the KARL program. Remind folks of its mission, its orientation, and what it strives to do.
Yeah, so we're a 2-year leadership program, and so in the course of that 2 years, our class participants, they make application, they pay a tuition to be a part of the program. They pay a $5,000 tuition for the 2 years. So currently our class, usually we have 30. This year we have 28 for just kind of a couple different reasons. It's a 52-day leadership experience, and so we'll have experiences. We've been to Garden City. We've been to Rock Springs already with Class 14. So we have nearly Class 14 graduates. We'll have over 400 alumni throughout the state of Kansas, which I think is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. From that 52 days, they'll travel the state of Kansas. From Rock Springs, we went to Garden City, and at each city and community, we have different. We talked about economic development in Garden City. You know, the community acceptance of agriculture in Garden City and things that they do as it relates to agriculture is really different and unique as we compare that to other places in the state of Kansas. And then we're preparing right now to go to Norton the first part of December, and that seminar is really focused on personal development and things of that nature. And so those are the 2 seminars that we have remaining this year. But then 2, we'll finish up year 1 in February, and we'll travel to Washington, D.C., and then we take the summer off, if you will, before we come back and start with year 2. That'll conclude with their overseas experience, which is, as it is today, is to Cuba. And then they'll have graduation, and then we'll start the application process. So somewhere during that journey, too, we'll start the application process for Class 15.
And crossing your fingers on the Cuba trip, because politics are involved, of course. But if that does materialize, that'll be an exceptional experience for that class.
Yeah, that is. And, you know, I can't remember which class was, you know, Cuba's been on the slate before. Right. And so hopefully it will work this time that we're able to take the class to Cuba.
And so folks understand the makeup of the classes. Yes, producers are involved, but several other backgrounds and professions allied with production agriculture, right?
Yeah, that's right. When we think about agriculture, and especially today in our rural communities, you know, to be successful in our rural communities throughout the state of Kansas, while our hearts, a lot of us, rest in production agriculture, for our communities to work and to tick, you need education and health care and things like that. And so there's things that people that impact and have our abilities to be successful in our rural communities every day. And so, you know, we don't just want folks from production agriculture. Otherwise, we would talk about the same things every day. Instead of adding, that additional diversity helps challenge the class into having different conversations. And, you know, as a result of those conversations, maybe we'll find different outcomes that allows us to be catalysts for change and to do different things in our communities.
What excites you most about taking over the KARL presidency, Joe?
I'm not sure exactly how to answer what excites me the most. You know, what interested me, Eric, about the position is I really think it's a good fit with my talents and treasures and things that, as I look back at my career and how I've gotten to this point today. I've got a strong education background from my extension background. I've got a strong fundraising background from my work at East Kansas Agri-Energy and Kansas FFA. And so if you take those things and then relationship building and things like that, I think, and I'm not saying I'm great at all of those, but I think I can bring a certain element to those and kind of help us take the KARL program to where we want it to be.
The program is a nonprofit, and therefore fundraising is part of it. The general health of KARL program-wise, support-wise, how would you characterize it?
Oh, that's a tricky question, too. Wow, you got lots of toughies today. So I think, you know, we're at a critical time in the evolution of our program. There's 2 things there's 3 things as I allocate my time that are important right now. Of course, fundraising is critically important. Because without fundraising and support from donors, then we don't have the ability to assess our curriculum and work on the curriculum and add the things to the curriculum that we want to be able to do. And so it's hard to prioritize which one is first, but fundraising is critically important. And I think there's a relationship piece, you know, as we continue to develop relationships and things like that, helps that be successful. And you know, there's a lot of interest in our curriculum. it needs to change and evolve as we change and evolve in agriculture and our rural communities and issues that affect our rural communities. And so, my first year or two we're going to take a look at it. But I really want to be a careful observer and listen to folks and see what we need to do and some things like that. And the third thing that's also critically important that we take a look at is our marketing materials right now and just what's the face of KARL look like to those in Kansas, in terms of our brand and some things like that. So we actually had a committee meeting yesterday to kind of look at our brand and kind of freshen our look a little bit, and some things like that so that it's easier to tell our story to folks about who we are and what we do.
The program's been around since 1990. Like you say, over 400 alums out there within Kansas and outside of the state as well now. So you're going to collect ideas and then curriculum changes or otherwise move forward, and you're keeping an open mind on all of that, it sounds, Jill.
Yeah, I think that's part of the responsibility for whoever sits in my chair is that having that open mind, and being able to take ideas that we gather from people that are critical partners for us. And so we're fortunate that we've got a lot of critical partners that have the ability to contribute time, maybe some talents and stuff. And so we don't have all the answers, but we can build that network, that we can provide that network so that the class has the rigor and relevance of a top-notch program, which is what we want it to be. And so it's just right now being a careful observer and kind of building those relationships and doing the fundraising and things like that to help us get to where we want to be.
Excellent. Well, KARL has a website. All of the information on participation, on contributions, everything is right there. And you'd like folks to go check that out, of course.
Yeah, so it's KARLprogram.com, all one word. It is, well, Eric, we've talked a little bit about our brand and some things like that. And so, part of it is being patient with us, too, as we it's not where we want it to be. It's not as up to date as we would like for it to be. But, we're working on it every day, and we're a small shop, But fortunately, when I was hired, I think the cool thing about my job is that I get to work with a lot of people that are passionate and believe about what we're doing. And so we've got local champions in Norton, we've got local champions in Garden City, people that care about what happens in Washington and D.C. and those experiences for our class. And we also have people that care about fundraising and are willing to help connect me with donors and things of that nature. And so that just, at the end of the day, allows us to cast a bigger net, and we can accomplish more and more quickly, by us all working together to get to where we are, because the first, 45 days, I'm not sure if I'm up to 60 yet, but we wouldn't be able to be where we are today without that support of folks that just believe in the program and roll up their sleeves because they're a volunteer and they believe in the program.
KARL has a legacy of success, and you're going to build upon that as you take on this new opportunity, Jill. We're wishing you all the best with it, and we'll likely be visiting about the program and its attributes as we go along. So thank you for coming over.
Well, thank you, Eric. We appreciate your support and all that you do for the program, and welcome the opportunity to be a part of your program anytime.
Very good. Jill Zimmerman is the newly appointed president of the Kansas Agriculture and Rural Leadership Program. Once more, if you'd like to learn more about the program and all the aspects regarding KARL, go to KARLprogram.com, all one word, KARLprogram.com. The program based here at Kansas State University, and you're listening to Agriculture Today. More shortly on the K-State Radio Network.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, continuing on now with today's agricultural news headlines, for you courtesy in part of DTN. Well, top trade officials from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico will not participate in the fifth round of the NAFTA 2.0 negotiations in Mexico City. That's according to a joint statement released by the three countries. The development comes as the ministers from the three countries met at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in Vietnam, and they agreed not to attend the fifth round so that negotiators could continue to, as they said, make important progress on key chapters advanced in round 4, according to their statement. Ministers had already agreed at the close of the fourth round to allow more space between the negotiating round to provide negotiators with enough time to analyze the proposals that all three countries have tabled so far and to conduct internal consultations. The 11 remaining countries in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, meanwhile, have announced they're moving ahead with the trade agreement after the U.S. abandoned it last winter. The Vice President of Communications for the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Joe Shuley, said that this development is not much of a surprise, saying that Japan had been particularly vocal about moving forward with the agreement. He said several participants were fairly adamant that they wanted to move forward even after the U.S. withdrew. The new deal has the potential to put U.S. exporters at a disadvantage in key markets such as Japan and Vietnam, says Shuley. Japan is the largest market in value for U.S. beef and pork. Australian beef already has a significant tariff advantage in Japan over any other supplier. If a modified TPP agreement proceeds, it would benefit Canadian, New Zealand, and Mexican beef exporters in the Japanese market. Canada, Mexico, and Chile are in the best position to supply pork to Japan, he says. Their existing economic agreements have already given them some advantage in the market over U.S. exporters. An agreement between Japan and the European Union reached over the summer is also a concern, according to Shuley. He says the EU is the largest pork competition for the U.S. Shuley said an economic dialogue with Japan is continuing, headed by Vice President Mike Pence and Japan's Minister of Finance. He said there are a lot of calls for the U.S. to pursue a bilateral trade agreement with Japan, but he says that doesn't appear to be atop Japan's list of priorities right now. U.S. wheat exporters weren't surprised either by the 11-nation trade effort. According to the Vice President of Communications for U.S. Wheat Associates, Stephen Mercer, he said in the past, U.S. Wheat has suggested the development of new free trade agreements rather than withdrawing from or renegotiating current agreements. It is shaping up to be another banner year for global wheat production, according to the latest USDA numbers. Here's more from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
We are into another year of huge world wheat production, in fact, higher wheat production than was thought just a month ago.
World up about 800,000 metric tons from last month to 752 million metric tons, a big crop.
Agriculture Department Outlook Board Chairman Seth Meyer, he says production will be high even with big declines in several key countries.
You've got Canada down 5 million metric tons. You've got Australia down 12 million metric tons. So you got a couple folks with big declines in their crop.
Including the U.S. down 15.5 million tons. But then there are countries like Russia.
I think we've raised the size of that crop every month for the last several months. That's just a huge crop. It's a record yield compared to last year, which was also a big record yield. Even their spring wheat crop turned out good this year.
Helping make the world wheat crop a big one, helping to grow global stocks to a new record high, making it more difficult for U.S. wheat in world markets. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
And in times of lower commodity prices and higher input costs, agriculture's data potential $1 billion revenue stream for farmers would be a welcome new market, but a number of witnesses told the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation this week that the world of ag data collection and sharing has a ways to go to achieve maturity. While the potential is there for farmers to sell data to a wide variety of customers in all segments of agriculture and beyond, right now, said those testifying, there's no standardized way to collect and aggregate the data to make it useful while still protecting producers' rights. You're listening to Agriculture Today, and coming your way now, the Kansas soybean update. And awaiting with that, as always, is Greg Akagi. Greg?
John Heisdorfer is joining us, a producer from Iowa. He also serves as Vice President of the American Soybean Association. And John, there's been so much focus on trade, not only in regards to agreements, but in regards to how the soybean industry has been doing on trade as well.
Yeah, that's correct. You know, we, as ASA, we spent a lot of time working on TPP, and we kind of thought we had it across the finish line, and then, of course, that's all gone and done now. But I think even without some of these trade deals, we've managed to increase sales of soybeans. It's not helping right now with NAFTA. We'd like to increase that number. You know, we sold $3 billion in 2016 of soybeans to Canada and Mexico. That's a great sale. You know, and since NAFTA started, we've fourfold the amount of product that we put into those countries. So we're still selling soybeans.
How much of it, though, has been the quality of the U.S. soybean and being a reliable supplier of U.S. soybeans to those countries in regards to trade?
Well, those things are both very important to our customers, and I think that they realize that. They know that, okay, we're not going to have to worry about, you know, something happening, you know, something at the ports or whatever. The United States is going to furnish us those beans. If we do a contract, we're going to receive them, and they're going to be good quality beans.
It's a hard question to answer what 2018 looks like, specifically with so much of these trade agreements in limbo.
Well, you know, we had a great crop last year. We got a good crop this year. South America had a good crop, and we still increased soybean sales. So I'm hoping that's what's going to continue to happen, and down the road we'll know more at the end of 2018, I guess.
Absolutely. John, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That is John Heisdorfer. He is a soybean producer from Kyoto, Iowa, serving as the Vice President of the American Soybean Association. He joins us on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission.
Greg Akagi with the update for us each Thursday right here. Many thanks, Greg. And coming up after our final break, our weekly horticulture segment with simple but important advice from our next guest about squaring away your lawn watering system for the winter. You're listening to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. Bringing this Agriculture Today to a close, it's time once more for our weekly horticulture segment. And yes, the activity in our lawns and landscapes is winding down appreciably with the change in the weather. There's one item that those of you with those automated lawn watering systems should consider, and that is winterizing that irrigation system. And we'll get into some things to cover there with Jared Hoyle once again with us. Jared, as you know, is a turfgrass specialist with K-State Research and Extension. When those systems work well, they are a wonderful thing, Jared. However, a little neglect as we enter the winter might render those a little less than wonderful.
That's correct. Now is about the time you want to think about looking at your irrigation system, making some repairs if you've had leaks through the summertime and maybe not got around to getting to them. Going out before the ground is frozen, fix those before you shut the system down before wintertime, because you don't want to have the water staying in the system and the lines through the winter. As we all know, as water freezes, it expands, and being in an irrigation system, there's nowhere to expand to, and so that will lead to cracked pipes underground, valves that would freeze together, and also your heads can do a lot of damage to those. So that will save you a lot a lot of frustration come next year, so you won't have to pay all the money to get it all repaired again.
Yeah. So again, if you've leaks that you can repair yourself, take care of those while you can test your repair work through running the water through and then draining that system thoroughly. And how to accomplish that, thankfully in some systems there are built-in drain valves that will allow you to get this done.
Yes, that's correct. Some systems are even self-draining. Other systems may have a valve where you go open the valve up and let the system drain down just due to gravity. If you do not have those, then it may be a good idea to get the system what's called blowed out, where they will hook up pressure to the system and just blow air, turn each zone on, and allow all the water to come out until it's just a constant stream of air, so that way you make sure that you have all the water out of the system.
And if one isn't personally equipped to do that, they can hire that done. That's a good
That's
point
correct.
there.
There's a lot of certified irrigation specialists here in the state of Kansas that specialize in that, and then if they come to it, you know it's done right, and you know that your system will be protected throughout the wintertime.
For the automated systems, does one have to do anything in particular with the sprinkler heads themselves to make sure that they're winterized?
The individual sprinkler
Right.
heads, if the system is automatic draining, it should drain out of the heads, gravity through the valve that you either would open manually or if it's a self-draining system. If you're doing blowout of the system, it will actually force all the water out from the back, and then the last of the water comes out through the head. So the head will be popped up, but it will just be spitting air instead of water. So nothing too in particular that you would have to do.
One thing to not do, although this should be intuitive to just about everybody, don't think that putting some sort of antifreeze product in your system would be a good idea. That's a really bad idea on many levels.
That is. If putting any type of additive within your system can do more harm than good with corrosion of the parts that are in it. And especially anything like antifreeze that would potentially drop that freezing temperature of the liquid inside the system. It will now be harmful to your turf when you turn it back on. Antifreeze was built to cool engines or motors of vehicles, not to put in our irrigation system.
Just in case that crosses one's mind, to cross it right off the list. Not only stationary in-ground systems, but any water hoses that one uses to water the surface of their lawn or otherwise, those need to be obviously stored away too.
That's right. You know, a lot of times this has happened to me before. I think this is the last time I'm going to water, whether it be a mum or part of the lawn or anything. I'll try to drain the hose, spread it out, whether let gravity kind of drain itself, get it off the ground. Preferably if you can store it inside just to keep the weather off of it. Will help prolong the life of those water hoses, as well as any sprinkler heads that you might have that you're moving around the lawn. Water will stay in it. Make sure you shake them out, drain those out, and also put those inside. That'll just prevent having to purchase another one the following year.
Very simple steps to take here. On a related note, and speaking of colder weather, we've had frost and freezes, and this is a message you trot out every late fall and winter, that when that frost hits that turf, one should do their level best to minimize the traffic across it.
That's right. Throughout the year, I will notice where my mailman walks across the lawn when there's frost. So when there's frost on the turf, it's just ice crystals right there on the leaf blade, and it's if you drive over it or if you walk over it, your dog walks over it, what happens is it acts like a sword and just punctures those cells, and then those cells end up dying. The biggest problem with frost here in the fall and winter time is that if it is injured, you're going to have to look at that injure throughout the entire winter, because it's not going to have a lot of time to recover after it stops growing.
Is this likely any kind of permanent injury, or will most turfgrass come back at some point next year?
It should come back. It shouldn't be a very harsh injury, so don't get too worried about reseeding the next year. The crowns are typically safe, especially if it's just walking or animal traffic. When you get to the heavier equipment, when it gets really cold, then you see more damage. But I would stay on the side of don't worry about it too much, but just do your best to minimize traffic on it so you don't have to look at it the entire winter.
You just as soon not have to view that over the next few months. So stay off your turf grass best you can as the weather remains cold for the next coming months. But once more, our principal message this week is to winterize those lawn watering systems, whatever sophistication they might be, homeowners. And Jared, we always appreciate your time. And even though it is the growing off season, we're going to come up with a topic or two to keep you in the loop here on the broadcast this winter. Until next time, many thanks.
Thank you.
He's turfgrass specialist Jared Hoyle of K-State Research and Extension, our guest on this week's horticulture segment, rounding out our Thursday edition. Thanks for being along with us. To remind you once more of something we've introduced here in the last few weeks, we now make Agriculture Today available in podcast form for you on your mobile device or otherwise. To subscribe to that podcast, go to this web address, ksre.ksu.edu/news. Click on the Radio Network tab toward the left side of that page, and that'll take you to the Agriculture Today link on the following page. That's where you'll find the subscription procedure for our podcast, ksre.ksu.edu/news. In the meantime, we appreciate you being along with us right here today. Please rejoin us tomorrow this same time, won't you? Until then, Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.